So after the court or the parties have decided that there should be some maintenance, and after they've given some thought as to how much it should be, the question then arises, how long is the maintenance going to go on for? Now, under the Act, the Matrimonial Causes Act, there are two situations in which the maintenance will come to an end anyway. The first one is when either of the parties dies. So if the husband dies, the maintenance order ends. So there's no suggestion of the maintenance being paid from his estate or anything like that. But if the wife dies, the maintenance will also end. So that's the first reason it'll end under the Act. The second way in which maintenance will end under the Act is if the receiving party, usually the wife, remarries. So that's a consideration for wives. And very often they will prefer to receive more of their financial settlement from the assets now, so more of the liquid cash rather than having maintenance, because then they don't have to worry about their former husband dying or losing their job, or them having to worry about whether they can get remarried or not, because they'll lose their maintenance. So very often wives will want to have their maintenance up front in effect. There are three types of maintenance orders in terms of length. The first one is a joint lives maintenance order, so this continues effectively forever until one of them dies or the wife remarries. The second one's a term order, so for a term of time, for example, maintenance for 5 years. And the third one is a term order with a bar on the end of it. So for example, 5 years with a bar. Now the point about a term maintenance order is that during the time of a term maintenance order, the person who's receiving it, if they want to, can come back to court and say, I want it to continue for longer. So in our 5-year example, the wife who's receiving the maintenance may come back after 4 years and say, I know it's only supposed to last for 5 years, but I'm not going to be able to adjust to independence properly. Therefore, I'd like it to carry on for another 5 years after that. Well, having a bar on the end prevents the wife in a case such as that from doing that. And many husbands, if they're having a term order, will want there to be a bar on the end, so they've at least got the certainty that at the end of the term of time they will not be paying maintenance to their wife. When it comes to deciding any of these orders as to what length it should be, so whether it should be joint lives, term or term with a bar, the court is going to look at all the factors within Section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act. It's going to look at the ages of the parties. So if, for example, the parties are in their 20s and are getting divorced quite young, it's less likely there's going to be a joint lives maintenance order, because a court will probably say, well, these people are at a very early stage in their lives, they're likely to be getting work at some stage, they ought to be able to adjust to independence. There's a tempering factor in that if those parties have got quite young children, it may be that the court would think it wasn't appropriate to end maintenance early. But generally speaking, for young parties, a joint lives order is going to be less likely. When parties are older, this is also going to be a factor, because if a husband who is going to pay is, say, 59 or 60, he will likely say, I'm going to be stopping work when I'm 65, 66. Therefore, there's no way I should have a joint lives order to pay maintenance to my wife. It ought to end perhaps at the most when I reach pension age or something like that. Where parties are more in the middle, where they're in their 40s and 50s, it may be that it's a closer call as to whether it should be a joint lives or a term order. It will depend very much on what the income position is of the receiving party. So in a case where a wife is in her late 40s or early 50s and hasn't worked for a long time, a judge at a final hearing may well accept that she's going to find it difficult to get back into the workplace, and therefore she's not going to be able to earn much, and therefore there should be a longer term maintenance order for her support from the husband. The next factors are, as well as age, income and earning capacity. As I've indicated on another recording, all of these elements are things which the parties, if they go to a final hearing, can argue about. So in terms of income, there will very often be argument as to whether a husband's income is what he says it is, because bank statements do not always, of course, reflect what people are earning, particularly if they do the types of work which lend themselves to receiving cash. Earning capacity is a different issue. This is about whether someone is maximising what they could earn. So very often on the breakdown of a marriage, one of the parties who has acted as a child carer will not be working as much as the other party, and it may be that they have not got much opportunity to go and earn, bearing in mind they've been out of the job market for a long time. On the other hand, it may be the case that a judge will take the view that if children, for example, have reached a certain age, that receiving party ought to be making some effort to obtain work, and bearing in mind their previous experience, perhaps before they had children, they may be able to obtain some work which will take some strain off the finances. And that may encourage a judge, rather than granting a joint lives maintenance order, to in fact grant a term order for a shorter time. Another factor that will be taken into account is the children. So if children are spending most of their time with one of the parties, let's say the mother, that's going to impact upon her earning capacity because it's going to prevent her very often from going out to retrain. It's going to prevent her from spending as many hours working as she might like to, because she may be restricted to, for example, school hours and having the obligation to go and pick the children up at the end. As a final point, physical or mental disabilities will have an effect upon people's ability to earn. It's also going to have an effect upon how long the order should go on for. If someone has got a particular injury which prevents them from exercising their particular skill, for example, or if someone works in a trade where it's quite physical, they're going to be able to say, well, I'm not going to be able to carry this on forever. Whereas if someone is doing perhaps more of a desk-based job, it may be they can carry on for longer. So those are the sorts of factors the court takes into account when it's deciding on what sort of maintenance order to grant for how long it should be.